Hello, fellow trumpeters and musicians. My name is Josh Rzepka, and today is Mute Monday. If you're new around here, Mute Monday is a weekly series where I discuss and demonstrate different trumpet mutes. And this week, I am very excited to be bringing to you perhaps the most well-known and most popular trumpet mute of all time, none other than the Harmon brand Harmon mute. Now, we can't talk about Harmon mutes without going all the way back to the very beginning. And that takes us back to Chicago in 1924, when George Schlüsselberg, a German citizen, files this patent for what we now know as the Harmon mute. And if you look at the original documentation on the patent, you can find a copy online, you will see that one half of that patent was awarded to Schlüsselberg and the other half was awarded to P.T. Harmon. Well, who was P.T. Harmon? Well, he was the investor behind the Harmon mute. Not only that, he was a business tycoon and multi-millionaire in the 20s in Chicago. He owned the Dreamland and Arcadia Ballroom, two of the largest and most popular ballrooms in Chicago. He was a big-time promoter and he was involved in a lot of different businesses. Well, a little over a year later, on July 14th, 1925, they are awarded their patent. They have got their mute. And I imagine that Harmon, being this cunning businessman and big-time promoter working all these different clubs, I imagine that he took that mute and got it into the hands of as many musicians as he possibly could. All the different trumpet players that played in his clubs, I am sure, had one of these Harmon brand mutes. And it started gaining popularity. It had this sound that people loved. And just 4 short years later, George Gershwin releases Rhapsody in Blue. And written there in the score, it calls for trumpet and trombone, both with a Harmon mute. The Harmon mute hits the mainstream, and suddenly it is everywhere. This is a sound that everyone wants. And all the other mute companies, they start making their own versions of the Harmon mute. They want in on the action. And it has never looked back since. Nearly 100 years later, the Harmon Mute Company is still making mutes by hand just outside of Chicago, and they are great. If you are looking to buy a Harmon mute now, there are actually a lot more options than you may realize. I think the most popular and the mute that you're going to find in every music store and in most band kids' cases is going to be the Model B. This mute right here, this is the one that most people have. This is their big seller and the most common one. You see it's got that stem and plunger on the end. And, well, this is what most people think is a Harmon mute. Well, there's a lot more. This is the Model B. Here is the Model A. Check this out. You'll notice right off the bat there's a couple differences. This one doesn't have any ridges on the side. And then you'll notice there isn't a stem. Actually doesn't come with one. And the cup here, that is really, really very big and deep compared to the Model B. That is much, much larger. Now there is also a Model C. And if we compare the Model C to the Model A and B, you'll notice that the Model C is not nearly as tall. This section of the mute is much shorter. And the ridges are back, but this section is shorter. And then it has a different shape right here, the way that it curves. It's got the plunger and it's got the stem. Now, continuing on that kind of like traditional Harmon shape, then we also have the Model L. And this is their copper Harmon mute. And check that out, there's no ridges on it. It has got the stem and it's got the cup there. And this is a heavy mute. The copper used in this is really pretty thick, and this mute really has got some weight to it. There's also a Model D. Most people are completely unaware that Harmon brand actually has a bubble mute that they sell, and that is the Model D. Comes in aluminum and then it comes in copper as well. And check that out. Real nice, big bubble shape. And here's the copper one. The copper and the aluminum are both identical in dimensions. This one is just copper and it is a lot heavier. Now, if we're going to start talking vintage Harmon mutes, well, we're going back to 1925, back to when they first started putting these mutes out. Now, the earliest Harmon mutes, they are identifiable by a couple different ways. First of all, the earliest ones actually have a stamp on it. And here's one. This is actually my favorite earliest one. You look there, it says on it, patented 7/14/1925, Harmon Mute Co., Chicago, Illinois. And that is the stamp that they put on the earliest mutes that they made. And this one right here, this is actually the original color, the original paint job that they put on it. They painted them different colors because different bands wanted them to be different colors. And also, not everyone liked the look of that plain aluminum, so some people thought this was a little classier. And there's two other ways that you can really identify an early Harmon mute. One of them is by the stem and the cup here at the end. Check this out. If you take the stem out, you can actually remove the cup off of the stem. And it was designed like that. Most people don't realize that the stem and the cup, on the original patent he calls it the funnel, the stem and the cup actually were designed to be removed. And actually the mute was designed to be played in 3 different ways. Check this out. The first way, stem and cup in the mute. The second way, stem and cup out of the mute. The third way is taking just the stem and putting it inside of the mute. Just like that. Most people don't realize that it was designed like that originally, and that really helps with intonation and response, particularly in the lower registers. Now I'm going to pull up the documents from the patent and read some of it to you. All right, I am on line 70 right now. Figure 5 shows still another modified construction of the device. In Figure 5, I have also illustrated the tube without any funnel, showing the fact that the funnel itself can be used or not as desired. That is really very interesting, and that's something which they changed over the years, because now the new and modern Harmon mute, if you try taking the stem out and then you try separating them, they won't separate. They are crimped in place so they don't come apart. I imagine that they changed this at some point because people weren't using it the way that they originally thought they might. And also they were probably losing the pieces. And it's really easy for those 2 pieces to fall off and for them to get lost. The third way to really identify if your Harmon is one of the old designs is by how the 2 pieces are crimped together. Check this out. If we come in real close, you can see that this is a really, really sharp crimp. The way that the metal is attached is very tight and it's really sharp. Contrast that to the modern day Harmon and you will see that that is really very rounded. It's a different technique that they use, and I'm not really quite sure when they changed it, but they did. So if your Harmon has that stamp, if it says patented 7/14/1925, Chicago, Illinois, Harmon Mute Co., then it is one of those early Harmons. This one here has a stamp on the top and it says Harmon Mute Co., Chicago, Illinois, but it doesn't have the date or the patent. It also doesn't have a sticker, so this was a later design by the dimensions. This one seems very similar to a very rare version of the Harmon Mute, which they made for a short period of time, which was called the Harmon Swingmaster. And here is a copper one. And I don't know if you can see on the side, it's actually engraved by hand. It says Harmon Swingmaster on it. And some people think that this is actually like the very first iteration of the Harmon Mute before it was patented and before they came out with it. I'm not totally certain on that. I know that there were some advertisements for the Harmon Swingmaster in later years, so they could have kept that name and used it for quite some time. It may have just been what they called the copper version. I'm not totally sure, but I'm going to keep trying to find out more information about that. Now, if you're looking to identify a Harmon Mute that does not have a stamp on it, however it has a sticker on it, well, here's some information that might help you out. Right here, this mute looks like, well, it looks like my favorite old mute. It's got kind of like this cream color paint and then red on the bottom. But this one isn't stamped and it has a sticker. And check that out, it is a blue sticker on this mute. And the Harmon Mute Company was using a blue sticker in the 1930s, and then sometime in the 1940s they switched to a red sticker, which they have been using ever since. So if you have one that has a blue sticker on it, then you can be certain that it's at least of a certain age. Doesn't have the stamp, but it has the sticker. And then afterwards they used the red sticker. So that should give you an indication of how old your Harmon mute is. Also, if it has that crimp on it, of course it's going to be an old one. There may be some exceptions, but these are some good tips and guidelines that should help you in identifying which Harmon mute that you have. Well, I think I've talked enough. I'm going to demonstrate all of these mutes for you. Well, I'm going to demonstrate all of the new Harmon mutes, the ones that you can buy right now. I'm going to demonstrate all of those, as well as the stamped 1925 Harmon, which is my personal favorite, as well as the Harmon Swingmaster, and then I will also demonstrate a copper example that has that blue sticker on it, just so you can hear a couple of the different vintage ones going from the 1920s into the 1930s, and then you can compare them to the modern day versions. So here are all of the Harmon mutes. So you've just heard all of these fantastic Harmon mutes, and I've got to say I was really surprised by all of these mutes. I mean, I shouldn't have been surprised because Harmon mute, they are icons in the mute world, but there was a couple of these which I really wasn't that familiar with previously, and it was a lot of fun being able to compare all of them and playing all of them side by side. I think it's particularly interesting to hear all of these vintage mutes side by side to their modern counterparts. Remember, Harmon has been in the mute business for nearly 100 years, so they have a lot of experience and it shows. The quality and craftsmanship of these new modern mutes is really fantastic. I gotta say, they are very well made. The response and the evenness across the board is excellent. The only mute that I had a little difficulty with was the Harmon Model A, and this one, remember, it's got that big indentation in it. And there's something about it, for me, I was having difficulty locking in those lowest notes. However, the sound on this one, wow, the sound on this one is just superb and I love it. So, you know, there's a little bit of a compromise with that one. The rest of these mutes, they played great. They all came through with a really nice buzz, and I was really very pleased to see such consistency and great sound throughout the registers in all of these mutes. So big kudos to Harmon. And of course, I gotta say, going back to my favorite, this vintage one, I've got some new favorites now with these new ones, but as far as all of my vintage ones go, I just love playing this. I think you can understand why this one just has such a nice sound, and it's really very, very light. As an actual mute, it's very light, and it just kind of, the notes just kind of pop out, and it's, you know, with a really nice big and full presence. And I like how it still is original, and it's got the stem and the cup that can be taken apart. The other mute that I'm going to kind of give a little shout out to is that Harmon mute, the copper one that I have, that has the blue label on it. I really love playing with this mute. It has such a smoky sound to it. And this particular mute works great in recording sessions, so I'm really glad that I found this. A lot of these vintage mutes, I found them on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. I've been scouring and searching the internet for years in order to amass this collection of vintage mutes. If all of these mutes here are an illustration of the past 95 years, I think it's pretty safe to say that Harmon will be around for at least another 95 years because they are continuing to hold up the legacy that they created all the way back in 1925. Coming up next week, I've got 3 great mutes to share with you. One of them is a little bit of a revisit. A few weeks back, I did a video with the Trumcore Zinger mutes and the solo Harmon mute, and after I posted that and shared it, Mike Giroux of Solo Mutes reached out and he said, hey, you know, I've actually got a newer version of the mute because I picked up my mute when it first came out at the ITG conference, and he made some updates to it. They're little subtle updates, but they make a big difference. So I'm very, very happy to have the latest and newest model of the solo mute Harmon because this is terrific, and he took an already great mute and he made it better. The other 2 mutes are very rare and very difficult to get. The first one is this Bobby Shoe Soloist Harmon mute, and this is just a tremendous mute, very unique, very, very hard to find. When they pop up on eBay, they are extremely expensive and they sell out quick. People snap them up. The other mute that I'm going to be sharing with you is one that I've never seen before, and everyone I've spoken with, they've never seen it before either. This is a buzz mute, and it is very unusual in its design. You can see there it's got, kind of looks like a shower head. It's got a lot of holes in the bottom, and this is an Aristocrat APM buzz mute. Super, super interesting sound. So I'm going to be very excited to share all three of these mutes with you next week. So thanks for watching, and I will catch you then.